All right. Good girl, puppers. Let's make sure everything's up and running. These are kind of like hard starts to the stream. Just like, boom, I'm here. All right, cool. Everything looks like it's good. Hello, everybody. Welcome to day 2 of my adventure in trying to achieve the CCNA certificate in just a little over a month. So as I talked about a little bit yesterday, I have some other certificates. So I have the CompTIA Networking Plus certificate, which is a big, it's helpful for when it comes to the CCNA, right? Because it's a little bit more shallow, the Networking Plus, but it dealt with a lot of the same topics. So I'm lucky in that this is not the first time I'm seeing a lot of this. That being said, it was a little over a year ago that I got that certificate, and unfortunately, none of the work I've done since has used any of that information. I haven't utilized it. So, like with a lot of things, if you're not using it, you lose it. So, I am relearning a lot of this information as we go. That certainly makes it a little bit easier, as it is something that I've known before. So, these are not entirely new concepts to me for the most part. Well, so far, I should say that. There's still quite a bit of coursework I have to get through. This is just day 2. So, real quick, I wanted to touch base on what we went over yesterday. So, we touched on the Osi model and how this is a reference for a lot of what you're going to be doing in networking. That's how I understand it. Actually, real quick, I just want to say again, this is all course material for me. I am learning this as I go, so it's going to be a great way for me to point out my own flaws as I'm explaining it. I'll notice that there's holes, there's gaps in my knowledge, so that's going to be really helpful for me. But I don't want anyone watching these to think this is all they'll need, or somehow I'm going to be like a coherent teacher, because that's not quite what I'm doing right now. But I do hope by the end of this experience, just prior to me taking the test the week leading up to it, I'll be able to put out almost like course content. I'm just gonna be going through the CCNA exam topics right off this site, and I'm just gonna see what I can do. And this is what I like to do with certificates. Right before I take the test, I go and I look at the exam topics, and I just talk through each one, and I just make sure that I have some sort of understanding. And of course, the deeper the understanding, the better you can connect one topic to the other topics within that field, the better you're going to be, right? The more knowledgeable you are, the wider and deeper your knowledge base, which is always good. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping to do by the end. That being said, right now, I'm not at that moment. Today, I spent the day going over just subnetting, and I am still confused. So we're going to go through that a little bit later. I'm going to do some practice problems. But I'm going to be using a lot of my notes. I'm going to be using other resources, and I still may not get it right. I still may not even know exactly what it's asking. So that's just the process, right? That's why we're here. That's why I am learning this stuff. I don't know it yet, but I hope to in the future. So real quick, we're going to go over what we went over yesterday. Just a real quick drop in the pond. We went over the OSI model. So this is a reference model. You're going to be using this a lot to reference different areas if you're troubleshooting or building a network or anything like that. As a networking, we're going to be dealing with 4, 3, 2, and 1, those layers, much more prevalently than we'd ever deal with 5, 6, and 7. 5, 6, and 7 is more your developers, your programmers. Transport is your ports, your session multiplexing, if I'm not mistaken. Network is your IP addresses. Data link is your MAC addresses. Physical is your physical. It's your wires, man. I think I talk about it a little lower here. Yeah, physical's right here. Oh yeah, we went into each one individually. Why am I trying to throw this out? Like I know everything. All right, so a great mnemonic for the OSI module is please do not throw sausage pizza away. This is what a lot of people use. If you have a different one, please let me know what it is. I'm always looking for different ones because, of course, this doesn't really make sense everywhere, right? There's going to be places that, like, I mean, networking is a growing industry all over the world. And please do not throw sausage pizza away. It's not going to make sense in a lot of places, right? So if you have a different one, if you use a different one, let me know. Let me know because I'm always looking for new ways to learn things that might be a little bit easier. Um, so again, a mnemonic is just a way of learning something that's so it's so hard to remember this in order: physical, data link, network, transport, session, presentation, application. So you give yourself a little fun saying to remember it, and then the first letter of each one of these coincides with the OSI level. Again, I shouldn't be going into this in this depth. This is what we did yesterday. I'm just trying to avoid subnetting. So, layer 4, your transport, anything, when you're talking about your layer 4, you're talking about segments. So your most common protocols are your TCP, UDP. TCP is your connection oriented. UDP is your doing the best it can. Yeah, session 4 also includes session multiplexing. That's to do with ports. That's so it can keep track of all your data because you're constantly sending information out. You're constantly bringing information in, and it's not all on the same program. It's not going all at the same host. Sorry, my dog's chewing on her fingers, chewing on her paws. Layer 3 is your network layer. We're not going to call them segments on layer 3. We're going to refer to them as packets. So your most common protocol is going to be IP addresses. IP addresses, IP4 is actually TCP and UDP. So when you see, oh man, I shouldn't get into this too far. We'll just most common is IP4, and we are currently making the shift into IP version 6, and that has to do with how the network was built out and how early on people didn't realize how the internet was going to be used, and we shouldn't see it wasted because it was a choice in ignorance. They just made a silly choice where they used a lot of addresses for no reason. But now we have IP version 6 coming out, and we're never going to run out of addresses. It comes out to something like 7 IP addresses per person, something like. No, it's more than that. I don't want to. Let's stay on track. So we did have 3 different types of IP traffic: unicast, broadcast, multicast. IP address classes. This is something we're going to cover today a little bit more in depth as we talk about subnets, specifically these /8/16/24. This is CIDR notation, but a lot of people just say slash or dash followed by the number. And we'll get into why that shorthand is so prevalent a little bit later too when we talk about like mapping networks and things like that. So you'll notice when we look at these addresses, there are some things missing, like 0.0.0.0 through 0.255.255.255, and that is a reserved address space for this network, and that is just something I don't know. I've never seen a use for it, but I'm new to networking, so maybe I'll figure something out for that. But as far as I know, it's unfortunate dead space. There's the loopback address 127.0.0.0. I love the loopback address because it helps me remember the spacing between Class A and Class B. If I know the loopback is 127.0.0, then that means Class A is 126.25.255.255 because does that make sense? If you take one bit away from this, you're going to get this. If you add one bit to the last address, the loopback 127.255.255.255, you go to 128. And so that's how I remember the spacing between Class A and Class B. Do what works for you. I hope that wasn't confusing. It probably was. These early on descriptions are going to be real confusing. I hope I don't. I hope I don't ruin it for someone. RFC 1918, also known as private addresses. These are blocks within the class A, B, and C that are not public addresses. They are private addresses. That means if you have this IP address, you cannot get out to the internet. It is not a public address. And we'll talk a little bit about that later as well. Okay, layer 2 is data link. So layer 3 was packets. Layer 4 was segments. Layer 2 is frames. You know what we missed yesterday? This is bits. Layer 2 most common is Ethernet. That's going to be copper. Wiring when it comes out in the physical bits, we're using copper, fiber, single mode, multi-mode. We went all over that yesterday. Whew. Yeah, I hope yesterday was not confusing. I hope today's not confusing. It's been a long day already. What is today? 224? That's not the right one. Yeah, here we go. Let's open this one. All right, so we're going to be talking about subnetting today. Let's see. I'm not quite as ready today as I was yesterday. This is a little bit harder topic. So computers are built on ones and zeros, right? Like if you go to the very bottom layer, of programming languages, it comes out to manipulating ones and zeros. That includes IP addresses and subnets. So when you see an IP address, this is the, let me make this bigger. I forgot this yesterday. Ridiculously small. Let's see, how does that look? Yeah, that's a little bit better. All right, so when you see an IP address like this, when you pull it up in your command prompt or wherever else you see it, if you're grabbing capsules out of the air and looking through them, you'll see IP addresses, ports. This is how they're notated. This is how they're shown. And this is known as the dotted decimal form. So dotted decimal looks like, and what that means is a decimal, which is a number, and a dot, then a decimal, then a dot, then a decimal, then a dot, then a decimal. That's dotted decimal form. That's literally what it means. So it's going to be 4 numbers and 1, 2, 3 dots, or periods. You can call them periods or dots. Goes back and forth, but it is the dotted decimal form. But this, like I was saying, everything's 1s and 0s. So to represent an IP address in 1s and 0s, here, I pulled this. Yeah, this is good. So this is the same, like right here, this top. Can I make this bigger too? Let's get 1/5. Oh, that's great. Well, maybe a little smaller. It doesn't quite fit it all in. That's okay. So up here at the top layer, oh man, it's not going to work if it doesn't fit it all in. Oh, it does, just barely. Okay, so up here we have 4 octets. So a single octet makes up one of these single decimals. So in this position, there can be any number between 0 and 255. And to represent that 0 through 255, dot 0 through 255, this is the possibility of an IP, right? It can be any number 0 through 255 dot any number 0 through 255 dot any number 0 through 255 dot any number 0 through 255. Wow, come on, Nate. Hopefully that's not confusing. So to represent those numbers, we come here into the binary form. Okay, so we can get, if all these are 1s, if all these are turned on, if the binary is 1, 1, you know, it can either represented by a 1 or a 0 there. So if it's all turned on, if it's all 1s, then you add up this top layer and it equals 255. So that's how you would get a 255 in that dotted decimal. All these uh, sectors in this octet would have to be in the on position. So you can represent any one of those dotted decimal 0 through 255 by manipulating these columns. So this can either be a 1 or a 0. If it's a 1, it means it's on. And you add it to all the other ones that are on within its octet. So if this was 0, if these were all 0 and it was just 1 and 1, if these were the only two that were on, then it'd be 128 plus 1. This is 129. So in binary, you would write 129 as 1, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so it's 8 numbers. It's an octet. So it would be a 1, 6 zeros, and another 1. That's 8 numbers, and that represents 129. Oh, man. I'm getting a little bit better at explaining this, but this is still a little confusing. So again, by activating any one of these columns, you turn on the corresponding number above it, right? And then if it's on, you add it to the other ones that are on within that octet, and that gives you the number, okay? And we get these numbers above as powers of 2. So 2 to the power of what? Right? Is that how we get them? Yeah, 2 to the power of 0. I don't know how. No, okay, see that? This is me miscommunicating. They are powers of 2s. I'm not sure how we get the 1, though. I guess because you just have to have a 1, right? Because you have to manipulate things to odds and evens. So you need that 1. But I'm not exactly sure how you get that top. I gotta learn this stuff. It's crazy. Like, sometimes you just take things on faith, right? Like, did you ever have a math teacher that taught you a formula and you were like, how does it really work? And they were like, just trust me, maths. That's kind of how I feel about some things when I'm doing networking. Like, you learn it in stages. It's only day 2. Hopefully, like, I probably should have learned this already. Or maybe it's just one of those things that it's like maths, right? Like, just trust in maths. Okay, so anyways, back to this. So if a single decimal of 0 to 255 can be represented by an octet, and we have 4 octets and an IP address, then we need 4 of these representations to get a binary representation of an IP address. Ooh, I hope that made sense. That was a lot of words. So this first 8 would represent the first number, the first decimal, and then there would be the period, and then this 8 would represent the next number in the IP address, period. This 8 would represent the next number in the address, period, and then this would be the final number in that IP address. Whew, okay, so it's really important that we know how to manipulate this, because this is how we do subnetting, which I don't even think I've actually talked about yet. No, I haven't. Okay, so let's talk about what is subnetting and why do we do it. I don't know if I'm really prepared to talk about this. We can't have the internet be all one flat address space. There'd be too many too many systems trying to talk to one another. There'd be too many collisions on the line. No one would be able to get anything done. So what we do is we cordon off sections into little networks. Little in quotes, because some of these are gigantic, but so smaller networks than one flat topology, and it adds different levels, right? And so these subnets, then all the computers can talk to each other. They can make like broadcasts, and it doesn't affect everyone else. But to communicate from one subnetwork to another subnetwork, you need a router. So we're talking about layer 3. You need to be able to route these packets from one subnetwork to another subnetwork, and that's just how the internet works. Like, again, some of these things you just gotta, like, I haven't learned all of it. You just gotta take it on faith, but we have to have routers. We have to have different subnetworks in order for the internet to work properly, in order for everyone to be able to talk to each other. So if we talk about, like, yesterday we talked about classes, right? We talked about class addresses. And after those classes, there is a slash, /8, /16, /24. So this actually denotes these classes subnet. So the default subnet for a class A is a /8. That means all the bits in that octet are on the on position, 255, for the first octet. So /8, that means the first 8 bits are on the on position. So if we go back here, we look at the first 8 bits of an IP address. These are all on the on position. Oops, that doesn't make any sense. There we go. Let's here, and let's pull up the calculator here real quick. So if we add 128, just, you know, to actually show the math, plus 8 plus 4 plus 2 plus 1, it equals 255. Again, so all these first ones in the octet are in the on position. That's a /8 subnet. Everything else is in the 0. Nothing else is activated. This is silly, but representing this, right? Let's get the representation. So this is a /8 subnet mask. Am I using the right words? I feel like I'm not. This is the default subnet for the class A address. Yeah, that's right. Whew. So again, /8, first 8 in the on position. We look again, class B is a /16. So first 16 are in the on position. These are all going to be 1s. Man, can I just, like, no. This is a class B default subnet mask. The first 16 are in the on position. The last 16 are in the off position. Look again, class C is a class 24. Clearly, we're just going to add the next 8 into the on position, right? So 1 tab. This is a default subnetwork or subnet mask for a class C network. So defaults are great, but they waste a lot of address space. I guess we should talk about what this means. So anywhere there's a 1, you think of as the network side. Anywhere there's a 0, you think of as the host side. So if we have all the, so for instance, a /24, man, okay, let's look at this group right here. A /24 would have 1 sub network on it, and that subnetwork would have 256 hosts. And then you would subtract 2 from that 256 hosts because there's a network and a broadcast. Man, these are not good explanations. I'm jumping all over the place. I wish I had a more concise explanation. Oh, man. And this is because I haven't quite grasped all this information clearly, right? Like, I'm working on partial information. I'm trying not to spread any disinformation while also trying to provide a reasonable explanation of what subnets are, what subnet masks are, why we use variable length subnets. And it's coming out a little crisscross. Let's do... Let's just do, like... Let's just go over some terminology really quick, real fast. So the /8, /16, /24 are all part of the class addresses. They're named this because they are classful, right? What does that mean? That means they are defined by that default subnet. So you kind of know what you're dealing with. And then there's sitter notation, which is everything outside of that. So like a /25, /26, /27, /28, /29, /30. In some cases with Cisco, you can actually use a /31. We'll talk about that later. Some special Cisco stuff that makes you not need a network or broadcast address. But sitter actually stands for classless inter-domain routing. Oh goodness, I didn't realize I was on the classless inter-domain routing. There we go. You'll never, I don't think you'll ever run into anyone at work that actually works in the networking, that works as a technician, that calls it the classless inter-domain routing. I feel like the only people you run into that are going to talk about it like that are going to be like marketing people trying to sell you something and don't understand what they're talking about, or people that want to know what you're talking about without it. When people call it the sitter notation, that's like maths. It's like sometimes acronyms are just acronyms. Like you don't necessarily need to know exactly what it means. But if you want to look into it, so the first word is classless. So the defaults are class or classful addresses. The non-default addresses, the addresses that you have to subnet mask, are the classless, right? Okay, so that's kind of where that comes from. But mostly you're just going to have people referring to them as the / or dash notation. And that's because when you make network maps, which are like actual drawings, instead of writing out that this is a 255.255.255.255.0 mask, you can just say, oh no, this is a /24, right? Like this /24 takes up so much less space. It's so much easier to write than to write it out like this. But then again, like you have to be able to convert between the two, right? Like if someone tells you that there's a /26, you need to be able to figure out what that would look like as an IP address in case you needed to. So you would know that a /24 is the first 24 in the on position, so a /26 is just the first 26 in on position. So it would be 255.255.255, and then the fourth number would be these two numbers added together. So that's 128 plus 64. Let's not mess up on stream just because I'm bad at math. 192. So the default mask would be here. Let's not write it in here. Let's write it over here. The default mask for -26 is actually what did I say? 192. Oh man, I closed it. Let's do the 6, 2. Yeah, carry the 1, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, 192. Okay, cool. So a /20. So this is a /24. This is a /26. So you get these numbers again. You get these numbers by manipulating, or rather just by convert. It's not a manipulation, it's a conversion. This is the same thing as this is the same thing as this. Like these are all the same thing. They're just conversion. They're just notation and conversions. So from binary to dotted decimal is a conversion. From dotted decimal to dash is just more of a, it's not a conversion, it's a notation. But you might need to convert back to get, like there's a possibility that you need to convert just to see what it looks like. But so a lot of this stuff, like it's just easier to remember a little chart sometimes. Like down here, over here, I got this chart that's -24 through -30. Which is pretty common subnets that you're going to be using, because 24 is a default, right? But then you can actually see there's like maths, there's like patterns. Oops. there's patterns. So if you wanted to, there is a way to just like figure out the patterns within these octets, because there are like, so you could see, you could just make 24 through 30 on the side of your sheet. 24 is a default, so it's only going to have one subnet. If there's only one subnet, that means that this whole last section is nothing but for hosts. So you add up all the numbers for hosts, you get 256, right? So now that you got /24, 1, and 256, and you've written /24 through /30 on the upside, then you just start doing maths, right? So you just start doubling this. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. And then you start having this. So 256, 128, 64, 32, 16, 8, 4. That makes it like, there's a lot to be said about how simple that makes it. But you have to understand the math behind it. You have to be able to do the conversions behind it, or else everything else is just going to confuse you more and more as you start like trying to make variable networks, as you try to start to like figure out what the network and broadcast is further in. Like, oh man, I don't know how to explain this. Sometimes it will ask you a question like, it'll give you an address, but the address isn't at the very beginning of that subnet. It's like somewhere in the middle. So you have to figure out how far in it is, like how many subnets in it is, and then what the broadcast and network is within that. And that can be, it can be a little bit confusing. It can get like, especially when like, it's not so much difficult when you have all your resources, or when you're just even just hanging out and doing it, but when you're doing it for a test, when you only have so many minutes for that problem, it can like, at least for me, it's like, oh my god, like just doing simple math and stuff can get real like heavy. So just having the practice, knowing the math behind it, being confident in your understanding of that can be very beneficial. And then also being able to make little charts like this from memory, or being able to do the math that creates this chart, super helpful. Also, learning your powers of two. I am not there yet, but I do need to get better at this. Generally, up to 256 is pretty easy. You're going to be using that. It's not easy, but it's something that you're going to be using so often that you're going to natively begin to remember it. This is where I just start to psych myself out, especially after to the 10. I understand that you're just doubling it each time, but man, sometimes it's just like when you get the pressure, does not want to make connections. Anyways, the point is like you really just need to do this over and over again. So that's mostly what I've been doing today, is just question after question, and then there's still some that I'm not there yet. So just really quick, let's talk about like the defaults again. So a /8, if we're only using the first 8 as the network side, that means there's 24 octets that make up the host side. That means there's going to be so many IP addresses within that subnet. That means, so if we take 2 to the, what's that, the 24, that is, I have it written down because I didn't want to, 16,770,213. It's a little over 16 million IP addresses within that subnetwork. So within each subnet at a /8, you have 16 million IP addresses, all on one subnetwork, all trying to communicate at once. Like, that's madness, right? Do you know how many collisions you would have? Like, how many routing issues within just that network? So clearly, these larger networks, you want to subnet them down. You want to make them smaller. You want to change that topology so not everyone's talking. It's also for like security reasons. Like, you don't need everyone on the same network. You don't need people in like I don't know, like an HR having access to the accounting network. Like these things should be separate. Like you don't want people looking in on HR's files. So if you keep these networks separate, then you can more easily control who has access to what, and you can keep track of who access to what more easily. Things like that. So you not only protect yourself, but it's easier to find breaches because it stands out more clearly because there's just not all that noise. So there's a lot of reasons you want a subnet. It's not just to keep your network. It's not just for collisions. It's not just for keeping costs down because of course all the public addresses that you own you have to pay for. So if you can subnet that down to only having a couple, costs you less. And of course we're talking about big businesses, not residential users. Okay, so a /16, that's going to leave you 16 bits for host. So that's 65,534 IPs on a /16. /24 is going to give you 254. We can see that in this other stuff. Let's see, /24 would be 2 to the 8th. The reason, so 2 to the 8th is 256, but you see I put 254. These are all 2 less than the actual power, and that's because these are available hosts. So there's actually 16, 77, 216 IPs, but 2 of these are the network and the broadcast IP address within that subnet. So every subnet has a network address, every subnet has a broadcast address, and they are the first address and the last address within that subnet. So let's talk about the formulas. Let's see here. I don't think I have them written down. I have them in my notes. Gotta get the old notebook out. Not very well prepared for today. I apologize again. This is gonna get better. I'm acting like I'm a teacher. I'm not a teacher. Okay, so but I do wish I was better prepared. This is a little ridiculous of me. Then again, I've been studying all day, so what can I expect? So yeah, how should we do this? Let's just do a problem and then I can kind of work it out. So I took, let's see if we can get it easy. We don't want like a hard one. The broadcast address. Oh, give me like, this is nothing. Alright, let's just do this. 172.16.55.0 -21. So this could be, and we're going to want to say what network, what subnet, what hosts, total subnets, total hosts. Okay, so much information that we're going to be pulling from. 172, we're going to look at the IP address first, and we're going to figure out what class it falls in. This is the first thing we're going to do. 172 is how it starts, the first octet. So we're going to go up here. 172 falls in a class B, right? So that means that the default subnet for this is actually a /16. The default subnet for an IP address that starts with 172, because it falls in class B, is going to be a /16. However, we can see that this has already been masked to be a /21. So we need to take /21 and we're going to subtract that from the original /16, we could just, you don't really need the dashes, so it's just 21 minus 16. So the new subnets that we're adding 5 new, the difference is 5. It's not actually 5 new subnets. The difference is 5 between the original subnet and the new subnet mask. So if we're at 21, that pulls the mask over in the octets. That means what used to be 16 hosts is no longer 16 hosts. It's now 32, which is all the, so if you have 4 octets, that's 8 plus 8, 16, plus 8, 24, plus 8 is 32. So you have a total of 32, but we've used, geez, is it 21? Yeah, 21 of them for the new subnet mask, so that leaves 11 open as hosts. Whew. All right. Maths, right? So now we can put this stuff, now that we have this information, we can put it in a formula. So 2 to the 5th, 32, right? So what we're doing is, this is the difference, the 5, we're taking it to the power of this difference equals the total subnets. So when we, oh man, switching this over, we now have 32 subnets on this. The hosts are going to be 2 to the power of 11. Again, it's 2 to the power of the difference. That's going to be, man, where's that chart? 2 to the 11 is 2048. Bam. So we know that moving from the default network to the new subnet mask, so moving from -16 to a -61, we changed the network. It now has 32 subnetworks, and each one of those subnetworks is going to have 248 Ooh, you know what? 248 is going to be the total number, but again, we have to remember that the upward and downward of each one of those, the first and last, is going to be the network and the broadcast. So this should actually be 246 IP addresses that you can assign to hosts, because the network and broadcast can't be assigned to a host. So we have to take those out. Man, that was not easy. That was not, that was not a good explanation, but I hope I'm getting across a little of what I worked on today, what I learned. Clearly, I'm not great at subnetting yet. This is going to be something that I am going to be doing every day, a little bit of subnetting every day on top of whatever I managed to learn through the course material. So also during the wrap-ups, I'm going to try to throw in 1 or 2 subnetting problems at the end, because they do get a lot harder. This is so significantly easy compared to some of the subnetting questions that you get asked on the certificate process for the CCNA, and also what you could just expect to see in real life when you're troubleshooting a network or building a network out, or adding a new subnet to an existing network. It's just, there's so much more complexity in how to do variable length subnets, so subnet mask. So just gonna work on it a little bit at a time. Luckily, again, I learned some of this stuff. I learned a lot of this, what we covered today for the networking plus a year ago. So some of this is review. Luckily, thank you for, thank myself for going through the networking plus one already. But some of it is also a little bit more complex, especially because we're dealing specifically with Cisco systems in this, and I haven't even gotten into the packet tracer stuff where we're dealing specifically with these Cisco systems that have certain abilities that other systems don't. So earlier I said Cisco is actually capable of doing a /31. Not all routers are capable of doing that, because they need that network broadcast channel. However, Cisco built in certain processes that allow a -31 to exist for their systems. Because, I mean, honestly, if you're doing a point-to-point, which is what a -31 is, you don't need a network or a broadcast. There's only two assigned IPs on that subnet. There's who are you going to broadcast to? Who are you gonna, it's just you and that other point. So it makes sense, but then at the same time, like anytime on the certificate for a point-to-point network, you should use a -30 unless specifically told that you're utilizing those command features, because it's just much more common to use a -30 because just it's so ingrained in people to do that subtract 2 in the formula because you're thinking about the network and the broadcast. So again, it's probably it's going to depend on where you work as well. If you're only working with Cisco systems, if they all have that built-in feature, then it's probably maybe a little bit more likely that you're using -31s. But outside of that, I think the vast majority of people are going to be using that. Dish 30, the classless inter-domain routing, -30. So again, being able to manipulate this data back and forth by using those 4 octets, by being able to set up these little charts. Honestly, I could tell you, they give you a scratch piece of paper, and I'm for sure going to write. I probably won't write out all 4 octets, but I'll write out a single octet. I may write out all 4 octets, to be honest, but I'll for sure write out one just so I can manipulate one and do that math. Because they give you scratch paper and use it and use that scratch paper. I will probably also have this chart. I'll be staring really hard at that note card right before I go into the test, and as soon as I sit down at the test, I'll scratch this chart out, probably a couple others, maybe, depending on the course material and how well I know it. Because, like, it's great. Like, you need to be able to know the fundamentals behind this stuff. You need to be able to know how you manipulate this stuff. But let's be real. When you're at your job, when you're at work, you're going to be using all kinds of different systems to help you do this. Like, you're going to have a calculator at the very least, but more often than not, you're going to have actual applications that do a lot of this manipulation for you. Being able to tell if they're doing them wrong, like being able to look at it and be like, oh, that's not a class C. It's acting like this is a /24 when it's really a /16 or something. Like, there's a bug in the program. Being able to see that is important, but let's not pretend like people at work are like doing this powers of 2 in their head or something, or like scratching it out on a piece of paper when they're doing their systems. That's not happening. So memorizing a little formula, memorizing a little sheet like this, or knowing the math behind it so you can put it on your piece of paper, I think that's completely fair game. And clearly they give you like scratch pieces of paper, so they know you're going to do this. But I'm just saying, like, utilize that, like, do it, because again, you only have a couple of minutes for each question, like, and that's if you do really well on some of the multiple choice. Like, if you can knock some of those out in 30 seconds, 15 seconds, then you can use like 2 minutes on a lab or something like that. But man, you don't get a lot of time. So if you find a way to make the math a little bit quicker, to guarantee that the math is right, that's important. Do it. No reason not to. So I don't know what that little talk was. Again, real quick, let's just show, like, if you were to take 180, 120, 91.210, just like above. So this is we're not even going to say we're subnetting it. We're just going to say like what it is. So looking at this IP address, we can say 180. So it's going to fall, it's going to be a class B as well. So let's just say what we know about this IP address. This would default to a /16, right? And if we wanted to gosh, if we wanted to like write this out, and if we wanted to shift this dotted here, let's just take this. Let's do this to show that we can. Oh, okay. Okay, Google Sheets. You tell me. You tell me what's up. Okay. So if we wanted to represent this IP address as these octets, it's not that hard. We move left to right and we just subtract this number from this number until nothing's left. So we would take 180 and we'd minus 128. Just my brain is not working right now, and I don't want to mess up on a stream, so we're just gonna do it like this. So that's gonna leave 52 left over, but that means, so we're gonna put a 1 here because that means that this place is active. We used 128 to take away from 80, so we're going to put a 1 there, and there's a remainder of 52. Does 52 go into 64? No, it does not. So we didn't use this one. It's not active. It's inactive. It's a 0. Does 32 go into 52? Yeah, it does. So this one's going to be active, and we're going to minus off 32 more. Now we got 20. Does 16 go into 20? It sure does. We got 4 left over. Does 8 go into 4? No, it doesn't. Does 4 was left over, right? Yeah, minus 16. So does 4 go into 4? Yeah, it does. And there's nothing left over. So these are both going to be inactive because there's nothing left to subtract from. So they are going to be inactive. So if we were looking at the binary representation of the decimal 180, this would be it. And then 120, 128 can't come out of 120. So this would be a 0. 64 can certainly come out of 120. That would leave us 56 left over. Why is this? It should be 32 up here. 32 can come out of 56. 16 can come out of 24. And 8 can come out of 8. And that means there's nothing left over, so none of these other columns are going to be activated. And then 91, so no. Let's see, 91 minus 64, 27, it's going to be active. 32 can't come out of 27, 16 can. It's going to be 11 left over. 8 can go into 11. 4 cannot go into the remainder, I'm pretty sure. 3, right? Yeah. But 2 can go into 3, and there's 1 remaining, and 1 can go into 1, and there's 0 remaining. So again, this is the binary representation of the decimal, or the decimal number 91. 210, so 210 minus 128, 82 left over. Minus 64, 18 left over. 16 goes into 18, yes it does, there's 2 left over. 8 does not go into 2, 4 does not go into 2, 2 does go into 2. And then the cool thing is, if you have the time, right, because time's a big factor on these tests, you can actually go back through and make sure it's right. So 128 is activated, plus 32, plus 16, plus 4 equals 180. So all I did was add up any column with a 1 in it. So 128, right, plus 32, plus 16, plus 4 equals 180. That's what we want it to equal. So that's how you can check your math. Let's just make sure I did all these right? 64 plus 32 plus 16 plus 8, 120. That's correct. All right, the next one needs to be 91. 64 plus 16 plus 8 plus 2 plus 1, 91. All right, 128 plus 64. Did I? Oops. We gotta clear it out. 128 plus 64 plus 16 plus 2. What did I do? Yeah, no, that's right. Okay. 210. So that's a way to check the math. And again, this is just converting between dotted decimal to octet, to binary. Binary, sorry, it's binary. It's represented in an octet, but this is binary. 4 octets, 32 total, represents an IP address. So some of this stuff you just have to like drill into your mind. This means this, this means this. An octet represents the first number, or it represents a number, can represent any number within a dotted decimal, right? That octet can represent any number within that decimal. You need, like learn it. But man, it gets really confusing real quick. So this is clearly something I need to work more on, and this was not a great explanation. We didn't even do that many practice questions. I'm hesitant to use any course material, so I'm trying to find like good practice stuff. I have some stuff, you usually have some stuff pulled up, but some of the stuff is like beyond me, and some of it's like, I don't know. A problem with free resources, of course, is if you don't know the answer, oftentimes there's not an explanation to tell you what you did wrong or how to go about doing what you need to do. A lot of times the free resource just checks yes or no, did you do it right or not? And sometimes they're not right. But that being said, they're all great. I totally use these free resources. But there are limitations. And I'm hesitant to show anything that I paid for because I'm like, how much of that is supposed to be made like public and stuff. I don't know. So yesterday we did some like really basic stuff with OSI models. Today I focused specifically on subnetting, and I really need to work on subnetting hard. But it's going to be something that I'm going to be doing in the background while I continue on with the course material. Like I said yesterday, I ram through this stuff. Like I immerse myself. I may not get it all right. I may not even understand it all the first time I go through. And in fact, it's probably pretty likely I won't understand it all. But I just kind of like let it wash over me. If I don't understand some aspect, I don't get caught up on it the first time through. I'm more about trying to make the broader connections, trying to associate different aspects of what you're learning, as I find that sometimes that really helps me in the overall process of learning these technology concepts. Technological concepts? That sounds better. Yeah, so it's a process for sure. And I appreciate anyone coming along with me on it. And I know there's a lot of people that are practicing for these certificates, and it's not easy. It's actually really easy to get like lost in the process and get like lose your motivation and feel like it's all a little bit too much. But really, you just got to stick with it. You just got to go through it. I'm happy about these kind of daily wrap-ups because while it feels like it's kind of taking time away from my actually studying, because I do try to come up with something before I come on here, some kind of outline, and that takes away study time. But at the same time, I'm going over the same stuff. And when I talk about it on here, I often talk about it in a way that I'm not thinking about it when I study it, and I see holes in my knowledge that I don't otherwise see. I see gaps that I need to cover. And another thing is I'm I'm actually really excited as the weeks go on to kind of look at the difference between the videos as I start to cover things over again. Because, like I said, I'm going to be going over these courses multiple times. So, like, here in 2 or 3 weeks, I might be doing another day of subnetting, right? I might be at this same exact position again, only going back over it. So, hopefully, I'll be able to show um, that growth. I'll be able to link concepts more soundly, and I won't be as flustered when I can't quite uh, communicate um, what exactly I'm going through, what I'm how I'm manipulating the data and why I'm doing it the way I am. Because like I said early on, sometimes you're just following the formula because that's the formula that was given to you, right? Like someone told you this works, this is how you do it, so this is what you're gonna do. But you're not yet prepared to tell someone why that works. You're only at the point that says, do this formula, subtract two off, and that's going to give you the total host. Now, I can tell you why to subtract two off. I can tell you how to get to this point, but there's aspects outside of it that that I just don't see yet, and it's gonna be fun to come back and be like, man, what was he thinking? So I'm hopeful for that. I don't feel like I really covered as much as I wanted to today, but I want to get back to like actually studying here. So I think I'm gonna leave it here today at that. It's been about an hour, a little over an hour, so this is a good checkup, a decent check-in. Um, Stick with me. It can only get better. So I will catch you and myself again tomorrow. And tomorrow I'm gonna be moving on. I'm gonna try to do some stuff with a packet tracer, run through some packet tracer. I know I was gonna do that today. Unfortunately, I just didn't have time with everything else. So tomorrow we're gonna do some packet tracer stuff. We're also gonna go over some more stuff in the course. So I'm gonna be a little bit further along in the course. So I'm gonna review anything that came up there as well. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head where the course is going tomorrow. I think we dive a little deeper into subnets, and I'm not entirely sure. I'll tell you what. Why not just pull it up and get an idea real quick? You know what else I wanted to say? Neil Anderson, the course I'm using, I think he does a good job. He's teaching a lot harder. He's teaching the same information I learned on Networking Plus, but at a deeper level. So there is more information there. That being said, I did go back to some of my other instructors today, most notably Professor Messer. I cannot say enough how much Professor Messer has helped me. His subnetting videos. If you are working on subnetting, if it's your first time, if it's not your first time and you're still having issues, whatever it is, like his subnetting videos and his 7-second subnetting, like we're not even going to go into that yet. That's a whole, so good. But
if you've been trying to wrap your
his subnetting video, the way he describes things, I don't know. I I just want to say, if you're confused, don't hesitate to just kind of push yourself through it and see if it doesn't click later on. But it could just be the instructor. Like I highly recommend going out, especially when there's free resources. YouTube has so many different um, people out there that are trying to teach this information, that are trying to pass this information on to others, that are trying to help each other out. Professor Messer, Dion Training, Michael Myers are three like really well-known ones, but there's a lot of other ones too out there. So I don't want to short end anyone out there. There's plenty of them, and they're all teaching from a different perspective, a different they all grew up a little bit differently. They all see the world a little bit differently. They're going to talk to you about these things in a different way. They're going to introduce them in a different order. And sometimes that makes all the difference. It just clicks different. And I got to say, I went back to like I said, I went back to Professor Messer today. And I don't know why, but I just find his information so much easier to consume um, than Neil Anderson's. Neil, like he does, like he goes in depth. He does a. I also just need to get better at subnetting. Like I don't want to take. It should all be constructive criticism. Neil does a great job. Everyone does a great job. I need to do better at learning this stuff. But I also just wanted to say like, go out there and find an instructor that works for you at the same time. So. But also realize that you have to do this stuff. You have to work on it. You have to get better at it. So hopefully, with that being said, as I do these wrap ups, like I said, I'm going to include some subnetting each time, some practice problems. Hopefully, like some actual practice problems, not like today. Um, and we'll see as I grow a little bit each day and get a little bit better at subnetting, as well as add more Cisco course material to my knowledge base. So I'm still really positive about this. I think we're going to be okay. Um, I'm excited to have this certificate under my belt as well, and to be able to express this knowledge in a coherent way that boosts not only the people's confidence around me and my knowledge, but also my own. Like I like to know things. I like to feel confident about it. Um, so I'm happy. All right, everyone. I'll catch you tomorrow, 4 o'clock, and we'll see what day 3 looks like for the CCNA certificate process. Thank you so much.